It was the 7th year after my divorce from Ethan Miller. We ran into each other by chance at a flower shop. He was there to buy flowers for his pregnant wife. I was just ducking in to get out of the rain. After a moment of awkwardness, we exchanged greetings. Ethan politely asked how I'd been all these years. I politely replied that everything was fine. Just as we were about to part ways, he suddenly said something. "Sonny, you seem a little different than before." I just smiled without saying a word. In reality, nothing was different. I just wasn't in love with him anymore. A damp wind blew in through the crack in the door. The only sound in the room was the rain drumming against the windowsill. The awkward silence was only broken when the shop owner came out holding a bouquet of irises. "Mr. Miller, you and your wife must be so happy together. You don't even forget to buy her flowers on a rainy day." Ethan took the flowers, glancing at me instinctively. He explained out of habit. "Candy's been a bit emotional during the pregnancy, and seeing these flowers helps lift her spirits." I nodded and offered a few polite compliments. Seeing the rain begin to let up, I picked up my bag and got ready to go. As I reached the door, Ethan suddenly grabbed my hand. "Where do you live? I can give you a ride." "That's not necessary." I took a few steps back, putting some distance between myself and Ethan. My voice was calm when I spoke. "I wouldn't want your wife to get the wrong idea." As I turned to leave, I thought I heard Ethan say something. The wind was too loud, so I couldn't make it out. But the breakfast I was holding had been soaked by the rain. It was a shame. I casually tossed the ruined breakfast into a trash can. The wind lifted my sleeve, revealing the faint scars I had given myself years ago. I froze for a second, and then it hit me. This was the 7th year since my divorce from Ethan, and the 3rd year since I had finally, truly let him go. There was none of the sadness I would have imagined, none of the hysteria from right after the divorce. I was perfectly calm, as if I were looking at a complete stranger. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clearing. I pulled my sleeve down and headed toward the bun shop. Stella, who helps out at the shop, greeted me with a huge smile. "Sonny, you're here. I was just clearing out some old stuff and found a box. See if you want to keep it. If not, I'll toss it to make room for the new dough sheeter." I brushed the dust off the box. My eyes fell upon a few words written in Ethan's flamboyant handwriting. "For Sonny." Stella's interest was immediately piqued. She said playfully, "Ooh, which guy gave you this present? It's so beautifully wrapped. You could tell he put a lot of thought into it." She eagerly looked for the signature at the bottom. When she recognized the elegant script, she froze. Even her voice trembled a little. "Ethan Miller," as in the legendary genius with a PhD in physics. The one who's ridiculously handsome and was in all the international journals for discovering an asteroid. The astrophysicist. Stella's eyes were suddenly filled with awe as she looked at me. "Sonny, who in the world are you?" I opened the gift box and said calmly, "I'm Ethan Miller's ex-wife. The paranoid one. The one who acted like a lunatic. The one who was institutionalized for delusional paranoia. The ex-wife he considered the greatest shame of his life." At Stella's persistent questioning, I sat down and began to tell her the story of Ethan and me. When I first met Ethan, he wasn't some legendary boy genius. He was just a problem child in the eyes of the neighbors, withdrawn and strange. He had no friends and no family. His parents, who were going through a nasty divorce, tossed him back and forth like a ball. The winters in Chicago are bone-chillingly cold. Ethan would be huddled in the stairwell, shivering in just a thin, long-sleeved shirt. I felt sorry for him, so I brought him home with me. While we were playing a game one day, my dad discovered his incredible talent for math. From that day on, Ethan's life was completely transformed. He won the Math Olympiad at 10 and got early admission to Caltech at 14. By 16, he was publishing in world-renowned journals and winning more awards than he could count. The same parents who hadn't wanted him were suddenly fighting over his custody. But instead, he knelt before my father and bowed his head to the floor 3 times. "I know who has been good to me, who truly loves me. From now on, you and Mrs. Davis will be my real parents. I promise I'll honor you both and take good care of Sonny." After that, Ethan's star continued to rise, but he never thought of leaving me behind. When he was accepted, he demanded the university make an exception to admit me with lower scores. When he became a professor, he insisted they create a position for me on campus. I was worried I wouldn't be able to keep up with him. But Ethan would just look at me and say, "When I was 8, My parents got divorced, and neither of them wanted me. I sat alone in that stairwell from dusk till dawn, and you were the one who brought me home. From that moment on, I swore I would never, ever leave you. Sonny, I wouldn't be who I am today without you. No matter how high I fly, I will never leave you behind. That was the kind of person he was, incredibly stubborn about things. Once he set his mind on something, he would never let it go. It was true for his research projects. It was true when he was pursuing me. And it was even true when he decided to cheat on me. He cheated. Stella's eyes widened in disbelief. But you were childhood sweethearts. You grew up together. With a bond that deep, how could he cheat? Who was the other woman? Some rich girl or a supermodel? Was she one of those scheming, venomous vixens you see in the movies? She was none of those things. The woman Ethan cheated with was a skinny, plain-looking girl who sold flowers on the street. By the time he was 27, Ethan had already achieved extraordinary success in his career. He was no longer interested in chasing worldly fame and fortune. He started dedicating more of his energy to his personal hobbies. He wasn't into stocks or funds or things like fishing and golf. Instead, he suddenly took an interest in horticulture. Imported, cheap, common, rare. Ethan bought them all and moved every single one into his small garden. His absolute favorite was the iris I had given him for his birthday years ago. It was this very plant, he'd said, that sparked my interest in all the flowers in the world. To think that such an unremarkable seed could, with human intervention, produce such a beautiful blossom. The whole process is just fascinating. He said he loved flowers, but what he loved even more was the process of making them bloom. In this little world he had created, he was the god who controlled everything. When they bloomed, when they withered, it was all up to him. I didn't understand what Ethan was talking about. A flower was just a flower. It bloomed when it wanted to and wilted when it was time. Why try to control all of that? But Candy, who was helping us move the flowers, suddenly looked up. Professor Miller is right. I love that feeling too. Whether a flower thrives or not depends entirely on how carefully the gardener tends to it. Look how beautifully this iris has grown. That's all thanks to my careful work. On an autumn day, when the irises were in full bloom, the two of them connected over flowers. And because of me, after that, Ethan started ordering flowers from Candy regularly. Roses, magnolias, lilacs. The house we lived in practically became a botanical garden. And the two of them grew closer and closer. Until one day, Ethan suddenly announced he wanted to sponsor Candy's education. She's just a teenager, but she's bright and hardworking. It's a shame to let all that talent go to waste. Candy nervously picked at the thick calluses on her hands. Her tan face broke into a smile that was both anxious and eager to please. Sonny, I'll study really hard. I used to get good grades, but I had to drop out to support my family after my mom was in a car accident. If you just give me a chance, I promise I won't let you down. Her youthful face was etched with a weariness that belied her age. Looking into her sincere eyes, I was suddenly reminded of 8-year-old Ethan sitting in the stairwell, looking so lost and helpless. My heart softened once again. For a long time after that, I treated Candy like my own little sister. I bought her clothes and taught her about skincare. I taught her how to navigate the world. She was always calling me her big sister, saying I was the kindest person she'd ever met. She promised that if she ever had the chance, she would repay my kindness. And she didn't disappoint me. She was accepted into the very university where Ethan and I both worked. And on the very night she got her acceptance letter, she climbed into Ethan's bed. I had left work early that day, planning to cook a big celebratory dinner for Candy. But when I got home, I found them. Their clothes were a mess, and they were wrapped around each other, their bodies pressed intimately together. In that moment, I completely lost my mind. I threw the cake I was holding right at them. I smashed every single pot and plan in the house to pieces. Ethan shielded Candy behind him, watching my rampage with cold eyes. Sonny, when you're done making a scene, close the door. You may have no shame, but Candy does. Between me and Candy, he chose the other woman without a moment's hesitation. I couldn't stand it. I demanded an explanation from Ethan. He just frowned at me. Sonny, you are still my wife. As long as you don't cause trouble, Candy will never threaten your position. Candy threw herself to her knees in front of me. Sonny, I know I've wronged you, but Ethan and I are truly in love. We're soulmates. We understand each other better than anyone else in the world. And don't worry, I'll never forget your kindness to me. I don't need a title, and I won't compete with you for anything. I just want to be allowed to stay by Ethan's side. I was only in my 20s back then, young, proud, and unable to tolerate the slightest injustice. I sent an anonymous letter to the university administration. I wanted to expose their sordid, unethical affair. But reality quickly taught me a harsh lesson. The university was never going to fire a star like Ethan. Instead, to appease him, they put me on academic probation. Ethan even made a public statement, asking his colleagues to look out for Candy. She is my student, and she is bright, diligent, and eager to learn. I hope that you will all, as a favor to me, not give her a hard time. She's had a difficult life, coming all the way from selling flowers on the street. Candy may not be the most brilliant student, but in my eyes, she is the best. She is my greatest pride. Ethan even admitted that he had pulled strings to get Candy into the university. He knew it was against the rules, but he didn't care. All he wanted was for Candy to have a brilliant future. And what about me? What was I? A joke? I hid at home, crying myself to sleep every night, tossing and turning. All I could see were the mocking faces of everyone around me. Ethan continued to tend to his irises. Sonny, don't you get it yet? Your job, your reputation, your status, everything you have because of me. Without me, you are nothing. I told you Candy wouldn't affect your position. Can't you just be reasonable so we can live our lives in peace? No, I couldn't bear the thought of my husband, the man I lived with day in and day out, thinking of another woman every single moment. I started screaming, shouting, becoming hysterical. I tried to get revenge on the shameless pair in any way I could, like a mad woman. During one of Ethan's lectures, I swapped his presentation slides with explicit photos of him and Candy. When they were being interviewed together, I rushed the stage to expose their disgusting affair. I wrote countless anonymous letters. I posted dozens of videos online, but all I got for my efforts was a psychiatric diagnosis. Ethan was too smart. He provoked me into these outbursts, then used videos of my breakdowns as evidence against me. His intelligence, his status, and his intimate knowledge of me, all of it allowed him to crush me effortlessly. In the end, I was expelled from the university, and my degree was revoked. And then Ethan, with his own hands, had me committed to a psychiatric hospital. I told the story calmly, but Stella's eyes were red with tears. She asked through her tears, what happened then? Later, while I was in the hospital, I found out I was almost 5 months pregnant. Ethan came and took me home. The baby's impending arrival made Ethan decide to compromise. He brought me home, held my hand, and said, Sonny, I know I was wrong, but you shouldn't have caused such a scene. Your parents have been worried sick over you. People point and whisper about them whenever they leave the house now. You're not a child anymore. Can you please stop being so stubborn? He placed my hand on my stomach. Think about the baby. Think about your parents. Tears streamed down onto my hand. This time, I gave in. After everything that had happened, I was completely broken, a shell of my former self. I spent my days like a zombie, staring blankly into space in that house filled with flowers. Ethan would come home on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to spend time with me, reading to the baby in my womb. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, he would be with Candy, enjoying the sweetness of their passionate affair. He ignored his chronic stomach issues to take Candy to all the trendy, new restaurants. Bubble tea, coffee, hot pot, ice cream. Whatever Candy wanted, Ethan would indulge her. This was the same man who used to believe that wasting even 10 minutes of his life was a disgrace. Yet now he was willing to sit through one mind-numbingly boring romantic movie after another with Candy. This man, who valued his career above all else, was now willing to do all sorts of childish things just to be with her. To advance her career, he allowed her to put her name on his research papers, even in fields she knew nothing about. To make her happy, he would play pranks on his colleagues and skip important seminars. He trampled all over my dignity, and he trampled all over the rules and ethics of his profession. But the thing that finally made me snap was the elaborate proposal Ethan planned for Candy. That year, Ethan became world famous for discovering a new asteroid. He wasn't just in scientific journals. His handsome face was everywhere, making him a household name. And at this high point of his life, Ethan chose to share the glory with Candy. He named the asteroid the Miller Promise. A promise from Miller for Candy. A promise that they would never be apart. On the night he received his award, in that romantic planetarium, under the projection of the asteroid he'd named for her, he held a small wedding ceremony for Candy. When I saw Candy, dressed in a wedding gown, walking towards Ethan, when I saw them exchange vows under the projected stars, promising to be together forever, I broke down all over again. Ethan and I had never had a wedding. No matter how many times I had begged him, Ethan would just say, "Sonny, you know me. I don't care for all that superficial ceremony. Instead of wasting all that energy, I'd rather focus on my work. I have too many experiments to run. Because I loved him, I compromised. And because I loved him, I lost everything." All my long-suppressed emotions finally erupted. In front of all their guests, I rushed forward, ripped at Candy's wedding dress, and slapped her hard across the face twice. Ethan threw a glass of water in my face and spoke with chilling indifference. "Sonny, you've crossed the line." He told me he wanted a divorce and was leaving with Candy. I refused. I couldn't accept it, couldn't let him go. I cried and screamed at Ethan. "If you walk out that door today, I'll jump from this balcony with our baby." Ethan didn't leave. He pushed me. Maybe he only meant to scare me. But because of that push, I lost the baby I had wanted for so long. I ended up back in the psychiatric hospital, this time for severe depression. At this point in the story, I managed a small smile. I continued in a light, almost casual tone. During my second year in the hospital, Ethan filed for divorce. I fought it, but in the end, I walked away with nothing but this box of miscellaneous things. For the first year after the divorce, I couldn't accept it. I self-harmed, had countless breakdowns. My mental state was so fragile that I couldn't find a job. My parents worried themselves sick over me, and their health started to decline. I was afraid of worrying them, so I started helping out at their shop, and slowly, my emotions began to stabilize. Now, I've inherited the bun shop, and life is actually pretty good. My voice was steady as I spoke, but Stella was a complete mess, sobbing uncontrollably. "Sonny, how could you have gone through so much? Ethan is such a monster. If I ever see him, I swear I'll punch him right in the face for you." Just as she said that, the heavy curtain over the shop's entrance was pushed aside, and Ethan Miller was standing right in front of us. Through the rising steam, I couldn't see his face clearly, but I suddenly remembered the words he had said as I was leaving the flower shop. I think he said, "Sonny, I wasn't sure about the rest of the words, and I didn't really care." I grabbed a napkin and clumsily wiped Stella's tears, telling her to pull herself together for the customers. But Stella suddenly got angry. She shot a look at Ethan, her eyebrows knitting together. She slammed the lid of the steamer basket shut. "We're not selling to you. I would rather throw every one of these buns out on the street for the homeless than sell a single one to this jerk." I gave her a helpless look, washed my hands, and started kneading dough. "Do what you want. It doesn't matter if you offend one customer. But if you actually throw out my buns, it's coming out of your paycheck." Fresh tears welled up in Stella's eyes. She glared daggers at Ethan and said defiantly, "Fine, deduct it. I'm still not selling to him." A gust of wind blew in from outside. It cleared the swirling steam between us, revealing Ethan's deep-set eyes. So many years had passed. Ethan hadn't changed a bit physically, though his presence felt heavier, more somber. He pulled $200 bills from his wallet and placed them on the counter. Then he expertly opened a steamer and took out a hot pork bun. Ignoring the scalding heat, he sat down at a nearby table and began to devour it. The way he ate, he didn't look like a distinguished professor. He looked more like a lost little boy. After he finished the bun, Ethan suddenly smiled. "It still tastes the same. It hasn't changed at all. Sonny, you have no idea how long I've missed this taste." Looking at the smile in his eyes, I finally understood where that flicker of familiarity had come from. When we were kids, Ethan and I used to help out at the shop all the time. Then my dad discovered Ethan's gift for mathematics. He loved Ethan like his own son and refused to let a generational talent go to waste. My dad would send him home to study, scrimping and saving every penny to hire tutors for him. Without my father, Ethan never would have become the man he is today. And without that success, he never would have cheated on me with Candy. And if he hadn't cheated, I never would have tried to kill myself. Because of all this, my father lived with a constant, crushing guilt. He felt that he had created Ethan Miller, and in doing so, had destroyed his own daughter's life. Until last year, when my father became gravely ill. Even on his deathbed, he was still muttering about it. It was my fault. I didn't see that boy for who he really was. I ruined my daughter's life. Sonny, please don't blame your dad. Your old man isn't good for much. I worked my whole life and don't have much to leave you. Besides that little two-bedroom house, all I have is this bun shop. You're a good kid, a hard worker. If you look after the shop, you'll have something to do. You won't starve. He was heartbroken that I had married the wrong man, and his heart ached for all the pain I had endured because of Ethan. He blamed Ethan, and he blamed himself. But right up to the very end, he could never bring himself to truly hate him. In his final moments, when he was delirious, the last thing he said was, "Sonny, Ethan should be home from school soon. Remember to save a bun for him. The beef one. He's always loved that one." My father had forgotten that Ethan was now a world-renowned physics professor, that he was another woman's husband, that between us lay a chasm of social class and an emotional debt that could never be repaid. He wasn't coming back, or rather, the person who had come back was no longer the same Ethan we once knew. I pushed the 2 bills back toward him and said softly, "You don't have to pay. Just take it." Before my dad died, he told me that if you ever came back, I should give you something to eat. I don't want to go against his final wish, but I also don't want to have anything more to do with you. Consider this my way of honoring him. Please don't come back again. Ethan was silent for a long time. Without a word, he suddenly rolled up his sleeves and started busying himself around the shop, wiping tables, sweeping the floor, just like he used to when we were kids. He showed none of the airs of a professor. Stella scowled and snatched the broom out of his hands. "What's with the act?" she said, her face full of annoyance. "Didn't you hear Sonny? She doesn't want to see you. If you have any decency at all, you'll get lost and disappear. Stop bringing up all her painful memories." I was grateful for Stella's protectiveness, but honestly, I wasn't sad anymore. When Ethan and I first separated, I felt like my world had ended, like I couldn't go on. Every night, I dreamed of our past together, playing house when we were little, him tutoring me after school, stealing kisses on lazy summer afternoons, holding hands tightly during the first snowfall, promising we would be together forever. But when the summer sun faded and the winter snow melted away, my world was plunged into darkness. The air grew cold, filled with vicious whispers. Everyone said I was punching way above my weight, that I didn't deserve Ethan. They said my parents had used their charity as a leash, ruining his life. If it weren't for you holding him back, Professor Miller could have achieved so much more. That woman is so beneath him. Why does she cling to him so shamelessly? Sonny doesn't even understand basic quantum mechanics. What right does she have to work at a university like this? Being with a woman like that is a disgrace to Professor Miller, the world's mockery, Candy's provocations, Ethan's cold indifference. It all felt like 1,000 cuts, slowly carving away at my soul and devouring my world. I kept hurting myself, cutting my wrists, try to feel something, anything, through the pain. My mother would stand guard outside my door all day, too scared to disturb me, but terrified that I would be gone by morning. My father would just smoke and sigh, trying to tempt me with all my favorite foods. But their worry and sadness only deepened my own guilt. I felt that dragging my family into this mess over one man was just not worth it. I wanted to get better, to live a normal life. But I just couldn't let go of Ethan. More than 20 years of being together, day in and day out, had tied our lives together. Every flower, every tree, even the most mundane object could trigger a flood of memories. Leaving him, forgetting him, it felt like being skinned alive. Back then, I truly believed that this was all my life would ever be. I would either live the rest of my life in misery, or I would end it all in despair. But the truth is, I survived, and I'm living a good life, a happy one. I have a job that I enjoy, one that supports me. My days are full, busy, ordinary, and happy. The 20 years I spent with Ethan were certainly the most unforgettable of my life. But beyond those years, I still have the rest of my life to live. So, I started to try. I put my heart into running the bun shop. Business has been a little slow recently. I had even gone out to buy breakfast from other places, hoping to get some new ideas. I just hadn't expected it to suddenly start raining. I hadn't expected to run into Ethan while taking shelter from that rain. And I certainly never expected him to follow me all the way here. Maybe our story wasn't completely over, but the love between us had been completely used up. I'd already died for him once. I would never shed another tear for him again. I looked at Ethan blankly, my silence urging him to leave. And under my cold gaze, he lowered his head slightly and said something. This time, I heard him clearly. He said, "I am sorry, Sonny. I regret everything." Regret what? Did he regret getting together with me? Or regret leaving me? Over the years, I'd seen articles about Ethan here and there. His career had stalled. Some said he was a one-hit wonder whose talent had dried up. Others said I had ruined his career. Maybe Ethan believed that himself. If I hadn't made such a scene back then, he probably would have achieved even greater things. Not that Ethan's problems were any of my concern. Even at his worst, he was still well off. No matter what, Ethan was still far better off than I was. I gave Stella a meaningful look. She was smart and understood me immediately. She grabbed the broom and started shooing Ethan out the door. "Are you deaf? We don't welcome customers like you here. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the cops. Go on, get out of here. You're disturbing our business." The dusty bristles of the broom brushed against Ethan's expensive suit. It left a dusty mark. Ethan was silent for a moment, then gave a resigned smile. "I understand." Before he left, Ethan left a debit card on the counter. I glanced at the slip. The balance was around $5 million. Stella insisted I keep the money, saying it was what Ethan owed me. $5 million? Even $500 million wouldn't be enough to repay what he did to you. Then, as if remembering something, she looked at me. She stared at me with an interrogating look. "When you two got divorced, you didn't walk away with nothing, did you? Ethan is so rich. Even the pocket change he might have given you would mean you wouldn't have to be running this little bun shop at your age." I did walk away with nothing. It wasn't because I was too proud to take his money. It was because I couldn't win. My outburst at the planetarium had utterly humiliated him. He was determined to teach me a lesson. Ethan hired the best lawyers to make sure I left with nothing. He stated in court that everything I had, I owed to him. "Sonny, anything I give you, I can take away. People have to pay the price for their actions. You broke our agreement, and you have to be punished for it." Honestly, walking away with nothing was the best-case scenario. At the time, Ethan was determined to get justice for his mistress. He even considered framing me, so I'd be saddled with massive debt after the divorce. When a man with his intelligence and status wants to destroy an ordinary person, he doesn't even have to try very hard. He could crush me with the snap of his fingers. In the end, though, Ethan didn't completely destroy me. Maybe it was because I finally gave in, or maybe he just didn't want to waste any more time on me. Ethan left me $100,000 compensation, he said, for the loss of our child. But my mental state was so fragile back then. The medication for my depression was expensive. The therapy sessions were expensive. That money was just a drop in the bucket. It was gone in no time. My parents used nearly all of their life savings to pay for my treatment. They took me to doctor after doctor. They even took me to see a psychic. For a long time, I couldn't stop thinking that my father's death was in some way my fault. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have had to work so hard at his old age. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have been filled with so much guilt and sorrow. Ethan hurt me, and I hurt them. It was a tangled mess of emotional debt that felt impossible to unravel. But recently, I've come to understand. Matters of the heart are never simple. Some things are just fated to be. No one can escape it. Stella looked heartbroken and wrapped me in a hug. She rested her head on my shoulder. She murmured, "After being so horribly betrayed by Candy, why were you still willing to take me in? Aren't you afraid I'll do something to hurt you too?" "No. My therapist told me there's nothing wrong with being a kind person. I wasn't the one who did something wrong. They were. I shouldn't punish myself for their mistakes. And I shouldn't let it make me hate the world." I found Stella at the shop's entrance at the beginning of spring. She had come to Chicago for a job, but she'd been scammed out of all her money and had nowhere to go. She looked like she wanted to ask for food, but was too proud to beg. I felt sorry for her, so I let her stay and help out around the shop. It's the same feeling I get when I see a stray cat or dog on the street. Even if I could go back 100 times, I still wouldn't have the heart to watch 8-year-old Ethan freeze to death in that stairwell. And I wouldn't have the heart to watch a teenage Candy let her life go to waste. Stella nodded, then suddenly leaned in and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. You're a good person, Sonny. Let Ethan live with the regret of losing someone as good as you. I don't know if he regrets it or not. All I know is that my chance encounter with Ethan was like a pebble dropped into a lake. It vanished without a ripple. I didn't give the little incident another thought. But then, completely out of the blue, Candy showed up. 7 years had passed, and the former flower girl was completely transformed. Her makeup was perfect, her clothes expensive. The slight swell of her pregnant belly only added to her air of opulent grace. They say loving someone is like tending a garden. Ethan had certainly cultivated this particular flower well. And yet, for some reason, there was a weariness in Candy's eyes that she couldn't quite hide. She dumped a briefcase full of cash on the counter in front of me. Her voice was cold and arrogant. Sonny, you have to have some self-respect. You and Ethan have been divorced for years. Stop harassing him. I know you don't want to give up being Mrs. Miller, but you lost. You need to accept it. Since you helped me once, I'll help you this one time. This money is enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. I want you to take the money and get out of our lives forever. Disappear from Ethan's life for good. Candy slapped a pre-written contract down on the counter. The sharp edge in her voice betrayed a mix of anxiety and arrogance. I was silent for a moment, and then I slapped her across the face. That one was for me. I slapped her again. That one was for the child I never got to have. And this one is for all the students whose places you stole. After slapping her 7 or 8 times, I rubbed my stinging wrist. Now we're even. Stay out of my sight, and tell your husband to stop harassing me. All that kneading dough had made me strong. The slaps left Candy completely stunned. She stood there, dazed for a long moment, before lunging at me like a crazy person. You're saying Ethan is harassing you? Sonny, take a good look at yourself. Do you know who Ethan is? He's a respected professor. Countless women throw themselves at him every single day. With the way you look now, you could stand naked in front of him, and he wouldn't even give you a second glance. He only has room in his heart for me. Only me. If that were really true, she wouldn't have come rushing over here in such a panic. I guess her life over these past few years hasn't been as perfect as she pretends. A man who's cheated once isn't likely to just settle down quietly. He abandoned me for Candy. So of course he could abandon Candy for someone else. It was just like his attitude toward his plants. He took them all in, regardless of their pedigree. He didn't love the flowers themselves. He loved the process of controlling and transforming them. He loved his own sick need for control. For a long time, I could never understand why my life had been so miserable. Then one day, watching Stella laughing as she kneaded dough, it suddenly clicked. I never liked the life Ethan had planned for me. I didn't like how much he interfered in my life. I was an average student. I couldn't handle the academic pressure of a top university. I came from a simple background. I could never get used to the networking and social climbing of his world. The expectations and scrutiny that came with being Mrs. Miller just made me anxious and exhausted. By the world's standards, I really wasn't a match for Ethan. But the person I fell in love with wasn't some great Professor Miller. It was just Ethan, the boy whose world revolved around me, who would have done anything for me. I exhausted myself trying to keep up with him, driving myself to hysteria. It wasn't until I left that suffocating environment, until I was free from Ethan's control, that I started to find myself again, piece by piece. Now, I'm doing well. I'm happy. Worldly success, fame, and Ethan Miller. They're all just shackles I can live without. But to Candy, my heartfelt words sounded like a provocation. She completely ignored her 8-month pregnancy, grabbed a nearby vase, and swung it at my head. In the end, it was Ethan who blocked the blow for me. Bright red blood trickled from his temple, staining his white shirt like crimson petals on snow. The color drained from Candy's face. She awkwardly pulled her hand back, looking at Ethan with wide, fearful eyes. Ethan, are you okay? I didn't mean to. Ethan's voice was ice cold, laced with an anger that was impossible to defy. I told you not to bother Sonny, and I told you to stay out of my business. Do you just ignore everything I say, or is your life so comfortable now that you've forgotten what it was like before? The same words, the same threat. After all these years, Ethan hadn't changed one bit. Candy thought that by winning against me, her position was secure. She had no idea that the price she paid was her own life. The opportunity Ethan offered her back then might have looked like an olive branch, but it was also a gilded cage. With a single word, Ethan could burst the bubble of her new life and send her right back to where she started. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them. I just called the police. It felt like history repeating itself. Only this time, Candy and I had switched roles. She was the paranoid, emotionally unstable one now. 6 or 7 months pregnant and still desperately trying to secure her position. She didn't even have the courage to stand up to Ethan. For a long time after that, Candy was completely unhinged. She hired people to vandalize my shop. She went around the neighborhood screaming to anyone who would listen that I was a homewrecker. She even copied my old move and sent anonymous letters to the university. But things were different now. Here, in this place I knew so well, I had the courage to face anything. The neighbors had all watched Ethan and me grow up together. No one was going to believe Candy's lies. The university had already dealt with this kind of scandal once and made it clear to Candy, both directly and indirectly, that she should keep her mouth shut. Finally, in a fit of madness, Candy tried to take me down with her. She set my shop on fire. Luckily, Stella noticed something was wrong and got me out of there safely. I called the police and refused to even consider a settlement. Ethan handled the situation with practiced ease. He didn't defend Candy, ignoring her tears and pleas. With his own hands, he sent her to prison. After the mess was sorted out, Ethan apologized to me outside the police station. The setting sun cast long shadows across his face, making his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, Sonny. I know an apology doesn't mean anything to you, but other than that, I honestly don't know what else I can do. If you ever need anything in the future, just ask. I'll do whatever it takes to help you, no matter what. I owe you that much." He told me he hadn't been able to stand Candy for a long time, but because of his status and other complicated reasons, he couldn't divorce her. The university administration had warned him they wouldn't tolerate a repeat of the scandal from years ago. No matter how much he hated it, he was stuck with her. You could see what their future would be like. The sun had set. I pulled my coat tighter around myself and shook my head, unconcerned. "I don't need anything from you. To be strangers again. That was the best possible ending for us.